Imagine Coachella, but for horror movie icons. I can think of 1,000 people that would pay an arm and a leg to attend that. I'm one of them. Someone do it! This is 2018's Bloodfest. Spoiler alert, while I might be giving you my opinion on the film, that's no substitute for watching it for yourself. Links to the film are in the description. And for those of you that need to hear this, this is just a movie. All stunts are for the sake of story and shouldn't be attempted on your own. Viewer discretion is advised. It's Halloween night and people are home watching scary movies. One boy asks his mom why they watch these movies, and his mother talks about how they watch them because they enjoy what scares others. After the boy's father leaves, his mother goes to the kitchen to get them a drink, and she notices that the light in the kitchen isn't working. She continues to the fridge, but she doesn't notice the figure looming around the kitchen. When the man grabs her, the boy gets up to check on her, but when he gets to the kitchen, he notices his mother dead on the floor. The masked man starts walking towards him, but the boy's father shows up just in time to shoot the intruder down. Then the dad tells him to look away. I think it's a little too late for that. That's years of psychological trauma that will require counseling for the rest of his life. We cut ahead and we see that the little boy was actually named Dax, and he's a teenager now. His room is filled with horror costumes, posters, and figures. It kinda looks like my room used to actually. Downstairs, Dax eats breakfast with his sister and he tries to explain what Bloodfest is to her. He claims that it's gonna be the greatest horror event of all time, but Jamie doesn't see it that way. Just then, Dax's father calls him into his office and he finds out that his father is going on the news that night to talk about how he and his family will not be attending Bloodfest. Dax finds that his father took his pass and he cuts it right in front of him. When Dax goes to work, he tells Sam about what happened, and he tells her that the scalpers are charging more money than he could ever hope to have for a replacement ticket. Then Krill comes in and talks about his gaming channel. Dax gets points for even showing up to work at this point. I would need a bereavement day for the loss of my horror pass. When Krill finds out what happened, he tells Dax to ask their friend Ashley for a pass, and Dax can't believe that she's going while he's not. After some motivation from Sam, Dax begs Ashley for a pass that he eventually gets. Once Sam, Krill, and Dax get to Bloodfest, we see the grounds, which is over 700 acres of blood and mayhem. This would be a dream come true. Please, can someone start a Bloodfest? This looks like a giant Renaissance fair for horror geeks. Once they get inside, they meet up with Ashley, who is with the director of the film she stars in, Lenjamin. Lenjamin and Ashley get a little personal, and they head out and leave the crew to wander the grounds. Krill notices that they have a clown town, and he swears that they aren't gonna go there, but Dax tells them that they are gonna see everything. After a little walking, Dax meets one of his hero actors, and he finds out that he isn't all that he had built him up to be. The crew heads to the main stage where the kickoff party starts with the host of Bloodfest, Anthony. While he tells everyone to get ready for what they've set up for them, he turns around and talks about how horror isn't what it used to be. He speaks about how horror has been overconsumed and overproduced, but he promises to make a horror movie to end all horror movies tonight. He introduces his newest killer, Red. He pulls 2 volunteers from the audience and Red turns around and slashes them right there on stage. At first, everyone is shocked by the display, but then they start to applaud. He might have a point. I'm not too sure I'd think anything of that. When one of the audience asks when filming will start, Anthony tells him that it already has, and a line of Bloodfest workers with chainsaws in the front start their engines. Now people think that this is a little more real, and they all start to run through the grounds. The people that think this is only special effects are the first to get chopped down, and the social media influencers aren't too far behind. Anthony warns everyone that if they follow the rules of horror movies, they might just make it. Sam keeps Krill and Dax from running straight to the main gate, and they take shelter in a supply room. Suddenly, Ashley and Lenjamin barge in, and they all try to come up with a plan. She shows them a crypto pass that she got when she first showed up, and Krill tells everyone that he can use it to get access to pretty much any exit terminal. When they look at a map, the best option for escape that they see is through the carnival section. Obviously, Krill isn't too happy about this decision, but I'd be perfectly fine with that. Lenjamin ends up getting a signal finally, and he calls 911. After telling the operator what's going on, the operator tells him that they have his location and tells him off. Just then, a chainsaw comes through the wall, and we see that Anthony has an entire operation in his tower that is intercepting 911 calls. One of his staff isn't too keen on giving the victims false hope, but Anthony shows him exactly why they need some characters with hope. Meanwhile, Dax and the others wander through the cemetery next, but Lenjamin decides to tromp through the gravestones. Not before he takes Ashley's pass though. He starts to break some of the rules and he ends up regretting it when zombie arms pop up through the ground and grab his unmentionables. Why the unnecessary force? Just kill me! Now that Lenjamin is out of the picture, the others run into the woods, and they come across a cabin that Dax's hero, Hinckley, is hiding in. The group barricades the door to keep the zombies out, and Sam asks Dax what to do. She points out that he's the one that knows horror movies better than anyone, and he thinks about their situation. Suddenly, thumping comes from all around the cabin, and a zombie comes in through the wall. After Dax hits it in the head, they notice that they are using electrodes to actually bring the dead back to life, and Sam and Dax head out to break the box that the signal is coming from. Meanwhile, zombies come into the cabin through the floor and things aren't looking too good. Dax pulls the plug just in time and they all head back out into the forest calmly. In the next section, they end up facing the character that Hinckley plays in his movies, the Arborist. Could you imagine coming face to face with your own persona? Once the Arborist shows up, Krill gets separated from the group, and they end up at the high school. They end up finding Zachary Levi inside, but the Arborist kills him off pretty quickly. While the group tries to hide in a classroom, Krill runs into some guys getting seduced by women at a campfire. After a girl tells Krill all about how Anthony would be able to create vampires, she shows him her true nature and she tries to bite him. Krill shows her that he's not that kind of guy and he turns down her advances. When the vampire takes a sniff, she realizes that Krill is actually a virgin and she sends him on his way. Well, at least we know one person that's gonna survive. Why was he running at all? It's like he's never seen a horror movie. Back in the school, Dax convinces Hinckley to play the Arborist's father to distract the killer, but he ends up messing up. Just in the nick of time, Krill bursts into the school and kills the Arborist. So the group takes a secret passage they find and they go to an underground section of Bloodfest. They come across a haunted-looking theater full of dolls as the audience members. I do not like dolls. Porcelain dolls and ventriloquist dolls are exactly what my Bloodfest section would look like. Thanks, Goosebumps. The group pushes through and Sam finds one of the vendors trapped. He convinces her to trade places with him without knowing what she's getting herself into, and he runs away. Krill and Ashley find themselves in a bathroom, and she's so upset that she's gonna die with blood and dirt all over her. So she breaks one of the horror rules, and she takes a shower. Meanwhile, Dax and Hinckley find Sam, and Hinckley switches places with her just before the giant slab drops and rips him in two. When Sam and Dax go to find Krill and Sam, they notice that Krill and Sam are acting a little awkward. Well, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and guess that Krill is no longer safe. Only virgins survive. I don't think he qualifies as one anymore. Suddenly, Red shows up and chases them through the facility until they come to a showroom. Guess I should have put a clown warning at the beginning. Never thought I'd have to do that though. These clowns are not Pennywise, but the fact that they got them off of Craigslist really makes them a little terrifying. Suddenly, the zombies show up and they start going at it with the clowns. Ashley spots Lenjamin, who is now a zombie, and she grabs the pass from him. Of course, he kills her quickly, but she passes it to the group so they can escape. When the three of them get to the big door, they find the guy that tricked Sam into switching places with him, and Krill gets working on the door. Just as he gets the door done, the vampire shows up, and Krill runs over to catch up with her. Well, now that he's not a virgin, she goes ahead and bites him, and Sam grabs a broken piece of wood in the shape of a stake. She runs the vampire through her heart, and Dax heads over to Krill to check on him. Dax tries to remind him that the virgin always survives, but Krill tells him that that just proves that he's a dead man. Then he dies. Meanwhile, the random vendor finishes Krill's hacking and he opens the door to find Dax's father, Dr. Conway. Conway comes in and pulls a gun out, and Dax tries to tell him that he was right about everything with Bloodfest. Just then, Sam is grabbed by Red and Conway shoots the vendor. Then he nods to Red that it's okay to take off the mask. Sure enough, Red is actually his sister, Jamie. Conway explains to Dax that this was all his idea to make sure that people understand the bad that horror movies do. Dax can't believe that he did all of this just because he hates horror movies, but Conway tells him that he hates horror because it killed his mother. Conway heads out to make sure everything is running smoothly, and Dax has Jamie release Sam. Jamie tells him that she's been helping her dad with the planning of this for years. She tells him to just go ahead and leave while her and their dad finish what they started, and she skips off to join him. In the control booth, the operator notices the open door and she shuts it before they can leave though. Dax and Sam try to evaluate their situation, but Dax seems to have given up now. Sam hasn't though. She tells him to never mind his dead mom, and that's enough to motivate Dax apparently. Meanwhile, Conway gets to the headquarters where he tells Anthony that he doesn't approve of how he's handling things, but Dax and Sam drive a tanker truck through a horde of demon-possessed high schoolers. Everything seems to be going so well until the truck dies on them, and they're surrounded by a nun and her cohorts. Well, they start the truck up and run over her without any worries. Back in the control room, Anthony convinces Conway to let him use the pulse effect. Anyone wearing a wristband will have a vibration pulsating through their body that will turn them into rage-induced monsters. Sure enough, the crew inside start turning, and Conway shoots them down. The pulse can be seen going through the entire 700 acres, and the survivors that are close to the tanker start attacking Dax and Sam. When Sam finally turns, I've gotta give it to the actress. Dax tries to keep her off of him, and he ends up crashing into the control tower where he goes up to try and convince his dad to stop everything. Well, Conway ends up shooting Anthony instead, and he gets ready to trip the remote for the explosives all over the property. The only thing that stops him is Jamie, who throws a dagger into his chest. As Conway falls out of the window, Dax and Jamie get ready for Sam to bombard them from the elevator. Sam rushes out of the elevator and takes Dax down. Then Jamie tells him to take her wristband off and everything goes back to normal. Well, as normal as you can be for killing a bunch of people and having black vomit all over yourself. That's not your typical Saturday night, but they seem to be handling it rather well. When Dax reminds Jamie that she killed a bunch of people and they're gonna want to send her to a psychiatric hospital, she says her goodbye and jumps out the window using her dagger rope to get down. Dax and Sam stand in the middle of the broken window and look at their not-so-classic horror movie ending, and the credits roll. But wait, there's a credit scene! Sam and Dax get to the parking lot where they wonder if anyone survived, but then the explosives go off. The end. This movie is exactly what it's advertised as, a bloodbath that tries to change the genre just like Cabin in the Woods did. They actually did a pretty good job of it too. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.